We got an injury update when it comes to Zion Williamson, and it is not good. But the question I know everyone's asking is, does he want to be in New Orleans? Let's talk about it in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with y'all on this Monday, kicking off a week's worth of podcasts. I got a fun week planned. There's a lot to talk about, and we're going to start with Zion Williamson today. We're going to talk about tanking and the idea of that tomorrow, but let's focus on Zion Williamson in today's show. I'm going to give you the latest on the injury update we got from the Pelicans. Maybe it's not as bad as people think. You know, we'll discuss that in the first segment of today's show, but then the real meat of the show is going to be in the second and third, where we're going to talk about, does he want to be here and what's going on between him and the team. I'm going to lay out kind of everything I know and my theories on what's going on. So you're going to definitely want to listen to that. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen every single day. We're free and available on all platforms for you all 5 days a week, breaking down everything you want to know about this team, the good, the bad, the games, even though we're not going to talk about their loss to the Spurs in this episode. But make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by PrizePicks. Check out PrizePicks.com and use promo code NBA, or go to your app store and download the app today. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Okay, so let's talk about the Zion Williamson situation. On Saturday, we got an update on what's going on with his surgically repaired right foot. And this is coming directly from the Pelicans. Quote, after experiencing persistent soreness in his right foot, Zion Williamson underwent medical imaging, which showed a regression in the bone healing of his fifth metatarsal pinky toe. As a result, the volume and intensity of his training will be reduced for an extended period to help allow for further bone healing. Additional updates will be provided as warranted, end quote. Basically, it's a setback. And I know what a lot of people are going to jump to, right? Like, he's fat, he's got weight issues. This is why it's holding him back. I want to be very clear on this one. If we're taking them at their word, and there's no real reason not to on this, this is just kind of, I think, one of those things. There are situations where no one's to blame and things just happen and it sucks. And honestly, I think this is one of them. There's kind of historical precedent in the NBA with this. Kevin Durant went through almost an identical situation with this kind of break in his foot. It just didn't heal well, right? Like they tried, they run, they jump. It doesn't feel good. It hurts a little bit. So they kind of dial things back to help them just heal. Sometimes it takes a while, right? A lot of this is with blood flow, and it's not easy to get that blood flowing to really heal this sort of injury. So this could be a thing where, you know, it's just not going well. Certainly the Pelicans botched the timeline on this. They really screwed up with the expectation, and their messaging around all of this has been really, really bad. But I look at this one, this setback, and we'll talk about the other stuff where, yeah, we'll throw some damn blame around and say, like, it's just kind of one of those things. It sucks all around, but I don't believe this is Zion trying to sit out. I don't think this is a fake injury or anything like that. I definitely believe he wants to be out there on the court playing basketball. It just sucks. It's one of those things. It's a setback. The worrisome thing here is when Durant went through this, he ended up needing another surgery to really get it fixed, holding him out even longer. Hopefully that's something that Zion can avoid, right? Or if that's what they need to do, no one's expecting him to play at this point, right? Like, you, dear listener, are most likely assuming that he's out for the season. I don't know if that's the case or not. And certainly I think there would be a benefit for him playing, even if it's like 10 games this at the end of the year. I think there's value in that. But if he can just get another surgery just to fix this and we don't have to worry about this ever again, I'd say it's probably worth exploring those sorts of options. But for now, Zion is out indefinitely. It sucks. But again, I don't really look at this as his fault. I don't even look at this as the weight really being an issue with it. It could be. I think there's an assumption to be made there, and it's not necessarily the wrong one. But as I've said repeatedly on the show, when it comes to that stuff, we just don't have all of the information we need. We don't. And the team, and I'll probably talk about this tomorrow. I'll talk about it in the third segment a little bit too. The team doesn't owe us that. They don't. I'd like it, certainly. You don't want to lie about it for damn sure, but they don't actually owe us a lot of transparency on this, and that's just not how teams in the league operate. No team does. So it's just one of those things that because there's been a lot of bad PR press, and they've botched a lot of this too, right? And Zion himself hasn't talked, which lets other people kind of run rampant with things. He could put a lot of this to bed by just speaking, but that's not owed. It's just a situation that I look at as blameless. It's just not healing well. It's fine. Like I've tweaked my neck before where I feel terrible and I think it'll go away in a day and it lasts a week, right? Like it's just one of those things that sometimes it takes a little bit longer, or in this case, maybe a lot longer. And they're probably not forthcoming with everything. It just sucks. Like it sucks. But this is very clearly, I think the word we can use is setback. That's safe to say, a regression in his healing. So it hasn't gone according to plan. It's gone backwards a little bit as he tried to ramp up activity. So they're putting him on ice more or less right now. Blameless situation in my opinion here as someone who covers the team. What's not blameless is the friction between Zion and the organization, because that is absolutely a thing, and that's what I want to talk about coming up next. Does Zion want to be here? Does he want to be elsewhere? Or are these things kind of fixable? Let's talk about what's going on coming up next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Before we get to that, though, today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by DirecTV. DirecTV, does this sound familiar? You got one device that lets you catch the game live, another lets you stream your favorite shows, you're watching sports highlights on your phone, and you've got your neighbor's best friend's login for all that other good stuff. Well, I want to tell you about a simple way to get all that entertainment you love without the hassle, and a great way to finally get your TV together. I hate having multiple devices. I got to watch Bally Sports on one, I watch TV on another, I watch movies on this thing. It's just like, it's a lot of remotes. It's a bit of a pain. DirecTV Stream, which is the only streaming service, by the way, that has Bally Sports New Orleans if you want to watch the games in the streaming matter. It's the way to go. So DirecTV Stream brings you live TV and on-demand favorites like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes, no need to buy another device ever again, and the best part, there's no annual contract with DirecTV Stream. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at directtv.com. That's directtv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package. All right, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen every single day. We're free and available on all platforms for you all. No paywall or anything like that. Just talking Zion and the team every single day, Monday through Friday. So subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube as well. All right, so we just went over the Zion news, right? Like he's going to be out indefinitely. That's kind of where we stand here. But there's a lot of stuff about him, and ESPN went in on this the other day on their show on Sunday, talking about how maybe they don't see him here long term. He doesn't want to be here. That's kind of their feelings, all of that stuff. So I think it's safe to say, and I hope you agree with me on this, and maybe you don't, that it is a mess between Zion and the team right now. Is that fair to say? It's a mess. Is that fair? I think so. I look at it as a mess as someone who's covered a lot of dysfunction around this organization and franchise, and I think this is a freaking mess. There's a lot of blame to go around. I've seen people want to try and always put blame on one side, right? Like this is kind of what we do in society, especially in sports. You rarely have just a blameless situation. Sometimes one team is just a little bit better than the other and they lose and they win, and everyone wants to be like, oh, that player or that ref, let's say, is the reason that they lost. When sometimes it's just, the other team was slightly better, right? This is not the situation here. There's blame to go around, right? With Zion's foot, I don't think there is. With this team and him not being potentially happy here, and this is a reason why people are kind of throwing some of this stuff out there. There's some coordinated leaks behind all of this. So the way I look at it with this, I do think Zion does not mind being here. I'm not going to say he wants to be here, right? I think when he was drafted, he looked at this franchise, this organization, and was like, that works for me. I'm happy to be there. It's not like, oh, I really want to be in New York, so I've got to find my way to get to New York as quick as possible. I think he was very open-minded about being here. And I think the team has done a really bad job of building off of that, establishing trust with him, all of those things. And he's not blameless either, and we'll get to that. But when it comes to Zion's issues with the team, I'm going to ask you a question. What's the first word you think of when you think of David Griffin? Is it a word like fake? Phony? I think those are all fair things. And he comes off that way, right? We know this. You know, he speaks of family, but then immediately leaks kind of derogatory things about those people to the media for that to kind of get out there. We heard the way Alvin Gentry really wanted to like physically fight him, right? He's talked about how he wants to keep Lonzo Ball long term and then immediately leaked to the Athletic of like, oh, we got to trade this guy. He's not good enough. He feels fake. He feels phony. And so Zion Williamson and his camp, let's use that one word, feel that too. And so when they've come here being open-minded to being with this team, right? And you give him 3 head coaches in 3 years, do you feel as good about that organization succeeding? Probably not. Yeah, it's nice they fired Stan Van Gundy, but they hired him in the first place, right? You still made that mistake. Undoing it and setting everything back a year doesn't make things okay. You don't get redos on some of this, right? The Lonzo Ball trade looks terrible right now. What message does that send to Zion Williamson and his family and his camp, right? When they see Griff making mistake after mistake, being totally fake, doing weird stuff that he does, right? Does that make them encouraged to be here? I don't think so. And that's why I think you see a lot of the distance Zion has kind of put between himself and the organization, not attending the OTAs, ghosting on Brandon Ingram in Phoenix when they were all going out to watch the Phoenix Suns and the Bucks in the finals and not going and not really kind of giving anyone updates, just didn't show up, right? Like the way the organization has gone forward since drafting him has not been good. This team would have been better, but they're not. And so I think his camp looks at this and is like, I'm not sure about that, right? I think they also look at the way that they brought him back from the injury his rookie year. The bursts, the minutes restriction, he hated all of that. That definitely created a divide there. He's a star player in a star-driven league, whether you think it was the right thing or not to kind of use him in bursts, limit him. And look, I think it probably was. If that's not what he wants, it's probably not what you should do. And then the other side of this with David Griffin, he's very anti-player empowerment, right? We know this. And to be fair, this is not exclusive to him. I would assume all GMs, all president of basketball operations are all anti-player empowerment. They want to get all the good players for cheap. And when they have those players, they don't want them to leave. That makes perfect sense for their job. But we've heard the things he said about LeBron James. We've heard, and we know he's kind of a control freak, right? Like he wants to be the smartest person in the room. He wants to be seen as the architect of all of this, not Zion was good and took them to the title. Same with LeBron, right? Like he didn't like that LeBron is the guy that won the title there and he's kind of in the background, even though you're the GM. That's kind of what's going to happen when you have star players. So if you're if you're Zion's camp and his family, are you going to look at this and be like, best place for my kid to be, my friend to be, my client to be, right? Think about your own personal lives. If you have kids, when there's maybe been a teacher that's a little bit harder or doesn't treat them as fair as you want, do you get involved? Do you give your kid advice on what to do? All of those things happen. It's no different here. It's just the stakes are raised higher because it's basketball and there's a whole lot more money in play. But I think it's kind of reasonable why he's not happy, let's say, or he doesn't feel good about this organization, right? You've set multiple different timelines with the coaches and what they're trying to do. You've had trades and moves that don't go well and don't work out. He's probably looking at this like we are, like I do, and go, oh man, this team's a bit of a mess right now. It probably gets in your head a little bit of like, yeah, I want out. I think that's a fair and valid and expected thing to a certain degree. I've seen a lot of fans be like, I'm not going to be a fan of this team anymore. It's kind of a similar thing, right? But he's not blameless in this even remotely either. And we'll get to that again. But this is why I think there's some divide in this, why he's not really being around the team as much, why he doesn't trust them when they maybe ask him to do something at times. I think he just looks at it and is like, Griff doesn't have my best interest at heart, even though Griff does and doesn't, right? He does, but there's parts of it that he doesn't. But that's a natural thing in that sort of guy who runs a team and star player relationship. But it's led to all of this. And then that's a little bit exacerbated by all the injuries and everything, and him not being on the court and him not talking and then botching the messaging behind all of that. And it just creates this freaking muck that we're all in right now. But Zion's not blameless either. So let's talk about that coming up here in the next segment of Locked On Pelicans. This is one I know you're all waiting to listen, so I'm going to make you at least listen till the very end. All right, today's episode of Locked On Pelicans brought to you by Built Bar. Built Bar is the best tasting protein bar ever. These things are the best of both worlds, right? It's a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. So they are delicious and they are healthy for you. There's so much like holiday goodness in these things. They're rich with decadent flavor, covered in chocolate, but amazingly low in calories, sugar, net carbs, and fat, but they're high in protein. I eat one of these things every single day, basically for lunch. And there's so many flavors, you're going to have a tough time choosing. Raspberry mint brownie. I love the mint brownie. Cherry, double chocolate's my choice. Cookies and cream, peanut butter. There's so many delicious ones. They even have an eggnog flavor that I'm kind of intrigued by. And a special limited time flavors as well. If you can ever get the coconut brownie chunk, just go and buy it. I've had a churro flavored one too. That one's been really good. So these things are awesome. So if you need something to get you through holiday shopping, if you need a new protein bar because yours tastes terrible after a workout or for breakfast, give Built Bars a try. So go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your next order. Again, that is promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off over at Built.com. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by BetOnline.ag. BetOnline has you covered all season, more props, odds, and lines than ever before. As football season continues the march towards the playoffs, you've also got college bowl season. There's NBA action every single night. So BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the sports action this season. Head to their new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. But you've got to use our promo code LOCKEDON to receive free money right there. It's like you've already won a bet. Whether it's basketball, football, NHL, boxing, UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games, don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. Player props are always awesome. Brandon Ingram's on a bit of a strong streak right now, over on points for him. BetOnline, it's the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen every single day. We're free and available on all platforms 5 days a week, breaking down everything you want to know about this team. No one else coming to you like that. No paywall, anything like that. Completely free. Talking about the biggest stories, Zion Williamson, around the franchise right now. And big Saints win the other day too, so make sure for your second listen you check out Locked On Saints with host Ross Jackson to break down everything black and gold. Okay, so we're going over Zion and what's going on with him and the team and why there's some friction there. Like there is. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. So I've laid it out where I think Zion feels and where his camp feels. But he hasn't, and look, I think they're very valid in feeling that way. But he's got a lot of culpability himself. A lot of culpability and blame on him for just not being the most professional he could. That's the word I've been using, and there's a reason for it. I don't really worry about his weight as much, though, again, as I said in the beginning, you've got to wonder if him putting on that weight, and we've heard some reports about all of that recently, coming in way overweight, which maybe makes sense given the foot injury, all that stuff, right? But does that factor into all of this? Valid things to be asking. But I don't think it's just that. I use professionalism because he's a professional NBA player. And yes, he's young. He is young, but in a job that pays you millions of dollars, where you can make sure you have everything you need to be the best pro possible, to keep yourself in as good of a shape as possible, to train the way you need to eat the way you need to take care of your body like you need to. Zion's not doing that. And so if you're not doing that, you're doing yourself a bit of a disservice. Look, Zion's 21. He's a kid for the most part. I was moron at 21, to be honest. I did stupid stuff, but I wasn't an NBA player. I didn't have teammates that relied on me. I wasn't getting paid millions of dollars. He is. As I said on Twitter the other day, he's missed some workouts, just hasn't shown up to them. You know, he gets away with this because he's the star player. So they're not going to be like, Zion, come on in. They're not going to fine him, right, over this stuff. They're going to just try and kind of figure it out. You know, he's fallen asleep. Well, we saw him almost falling asleep on the bench, right? He's fallen asleep in film study, like in film review. Is that a big deal? Like, no, I don't care about that at all. He's not playing right now. But would it be good for him to kind of go through some of these like healthier habits? Like, yes, absolutely. But skipping rehab. And again, he's doing this because, and this hasn't been like recent, or I don't have a great, the most recent update on it, but he hasn't been doing much. But he's skipped things that he needs to be at the team for that comes to trying to get him back out on the court. And so, not doing that, again, it's coming from a place of, I don't trust this team. I'm not going to listen to what Aaron Nelson says because I don't think he's actually looking out for the best for me. And I know my body and I'm going to do what I think I need to do. To a degree, he's not wrong. And I get where he's coming from. But at a certain point, this is what I mean about kind of like growing up, right? Yeah, you're 21, but you're a pro. You're in the workforce, right? Like you've got to follow certain things. It's what you have to do. Aaron Nelson is considered one of the best in the business. If you don't trust him, I don't really know what to tell you, right? You don't know better than doctors. It's really that simple. So I understand where he's coming from, but this is what I mean by grow up, act like a professional player. And he's not always doing that. Will that get better with time? Yeah. Was LeBron James like this at 21? No. But there's also been enough case studies of guys to follow to know what to do. There's mentorship out there if you want it. LeBron would happily talk to Zion about what he does to keep himself in the best shape possible. Go out and use those resources and everything. And he's not doing that, right? He's not being a great teammate. Again, I'm not going to fault him that much for missing OTAs in Nashville with the team. Is it that big of a deal? No. Would you like him doing that? Yeah. Even just being there if you couldn't play because you had a broken foot, right? Be part of the team. Be engaged. Be involved. He's a little withdrawn from everything right now. Again, it's understandable, but at a certain point, you need to put that past you. Listen to the medical professional and kind of do what he says. Like if I hurt myself and I go to a doctor and the doctor's like, do X, Y, and Z, I better do X, Y, and Z. It's kind of that simple. It's a blanket statement, but you get what I'm trying to say. And that's not what he is doing. And that is something that is holding him back. That's something that makes it tough for the organization to go forward. And that's partially why we're in this mess. So it's a bit of like a circle that, a cycle that repeats or self-perpetuating. There we go. That's a word, cycle, right? He doesn't trust the team, so he doesn't show up. So they have to do things that makes him distrust them more. And then we're in this damn thing. It sucks. I don't know how you break that. Do you fire David Griffin? And at that point, you've got to fire Aaron Nelson too because Zion doesn't trust him. Does that fix it? Maybe. Making good decisions, putting a winning team out on the court would probably have helped. But it's too late for all of that. So that's why I do think he would be open to staying, but probably not with the way it's going. I'd said this when a lot of the Zion Griff stuff dropped a couple of days before media day. And I said, I think the biggest problem he has is with Griffin and the training staff, but not with the organization. I think it's those people. That's not great. And in a way, Griff hasn't done a ton wrong on some of that front, but clearly wasn't prepared to handle someone like Zion Williamson. So this is where we end up. This is why there's reports about this. And my take on it is everyone grow the hell up and act like professionals. That is much easier said than done. And that's why I think there's blame all around when it comes to kind of the rift between Zion and the organization. It's partially on him. It's actually a lot on him. And it's a whole lot on Griff and the organization as a whole. So there you go. Let me know in the YouTube comments. Are you picking a side? Are you cool with it being a both sides thing, right? Do you feel there's blame for the foot injury and kind of the regression we've seen from it, even though I don't? Let me know in the comments on YouTube. So that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. Again, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen every single day. Tomorrow, should this team tank? Should this team tank? I was anti-tank for a while. Am I still? We'll talk about it tomorrow in Locked On Pelicans. And now for your second listen, go check out Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q, with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. It's free and available on all platforms. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLAJake on Twitter, and I'll be back with you all tomorrow.